Now, as many of you already know that as it stands, the EU Commission wants to impose a tariff increase onto Chinese EV makers like NIO. Well, China today just retaliated or slapped back by putting an anti-dumping measure onto EU's branding. I mean, for the year 2023, we know that EU generated over 335 billion euros from exporting cognac, right? And of which these anti-dumping measures, which are going to take effect from Friday, it is really going to hurt Europe. I mean, this just shows you that because of this tariff increase that EU Commission wants to impose on the Chinese EVs, when China retaliates like what we are seeing them doing right now, it will hurt more of Europe than it hurts China, which is why it's important that both parties find a solid ground, which is why it's important that Europe comes down and cuts these tariffs by a big margin. Otherwise, then it's going to be bad. Trade wars are going to start, and this is not good for both countries and also us as investors. So this is something that, of course, we don't want to see, which is why companies like BMW, Mercedes, Volkswagen, they've been stressing the point or telling EU Commission to go and find or continue with the talks and find a solid ground with China, because if they don't get to solution that favors both parties, then it's going to go down. What we are seeing now is just the first measures that China is pulling onto, of course, Europe, right? I mean, 335 euros is what Europe is generating by exporting their cognac, which, knowing that China is the second largest market for brandy or cognac, this means one thing, and that is it will really hurt them so bad. So this is what I've been saying ever since we read firstly about this tariff increase being imposed onto Chinese EVs like NIO, to say that when China retaliates, it won't be good, because Europe will lose more than what China can lose. I mean, when you look into EVs, like I always tell you or remind you on a day-to-day, that NIO is not selling that much in Europe. Yes, they want the European market, but they are not selling that much as it stands. I think the Europe sales only constitute to like 2% of NIO's total sales, and therefore it's not a train smash that NIO for now does not sell their cars in Europe. But I tell you, in the long term, Europe will make a difference, especially with the sub-brands. It will make the market share for NIO, they will make a huge difference, which is why it's important for both countries or both parties to find a solid ground to make sure that whatever they decide, both parties are happy and it can be business as usual. So this is what we read this morning. This is what the BMW, Mercedes were talking about, some of the things they were talking about when it comes to this tariff increase into Chinese EV makers like NIO. This is why they were giving guidance to the EU Commission, because they know that when China retaliates, not only will it hurt them as the car companies, but it will also transfer and hurt other industries in Europe as a whole, which is something that we don't want to see, something that is not good for everyone. And therefore, there must just be a solid ground that both parties they meet and they agree, and these things, it just fades away. But the good thing, as said by the new president yesterday, in the long term, these tariffs will fade away. This is what the president of NIO said yesterday during an interview, which is something that we look forward to, and I think it's good we look forward to that day. As it stands, you know that Chinese EVs are getting 10% of tariffs in Europe as it stands, and therefore adding this 20.8%, yeah, it's just not good, especially for EV companies like NIO that are selling premium cars which cannot be afforded by just anyone. So this is what we read today. This is what China responds, or this is the first response of China towards the decision of Europe in wanting to impose the tariffs. It simply means that if these news are coming today, it's still back and forth. They are not finding a solution, which is why China it's now deciding to slap back Europe by putting these measures against brandy, or that is important from Europe, which generated Europe around 335 euros last year, which shows you the kind of a big market this is. And if it's being restrained by the second largest market for brandy cognac, then you and me can definitely agree that Europe and right now is not happy about this, and I think they will take it quite seriously to say that they must find a solid ground that favors both parties to not hurt their companies or those European companies that are also doing business in China. So yeah, tell me about this. Blue sky is coming. I think we'll find a solution. The fact that China started also retaliating by putting some measures like this, I think it will make the solution to come quicker, because as it stands it was just Europe 20.8% to NEO, but now we've got something that we've got a measure that will take effect on Friday, which is about this brandy cognac being exported to China, which is not that good for Europe, and it will make them take this whole process, this whole dilemma of tariffs so serious in a way that they want to find a solution, right? Otherwise, with all that, I just thought I'd just give you this quick update. Tell me what you think. I think blue sky is coming. Those that are persevering will definitely be rewarded with time. I think new stock price, as I'm doing this video, in Hong Kong, Singapore today didn't finish very well. I think it was around 10% because of the outcome, or some of the outcomes that came out from the stimulus and packaging, which led into some of the investors not so happy about that, and it is for that reason that Chinese stocks fell or dropped quite sharply after China laid out a plan of how they plan on boosting the economy by the big stimulus which they announced. But as the new investors will remain long and strong, blue sky is coming. Yes, we want the stimulus, but NEO, it is a company that continues to do very well. Even without this stimulus, NEO has been doing well. We need this stimulus for NEO to continue growing and doing exceptionally well, because I mean it will open so many doors, and it over and above that, it is going to revive the stock market or the Chinese equities in terms of the share price, which is what we want to see as investors. Otherwise, that's all from me. Do your own DD, and God bless you all.